Mississippi mud pie is one of my favorite desserts to make in the summer. You will dirty a couple dishes making it, but there's no baking required, and it's a really nice, refreshing, and cool dessert, but it's also still really decadent and indulgent without feeling like too much. So let's get started. No oven preheating required. We're going to start by making our Oreo crust. You will need 24 of these chocolate sandwich cookies, 25 though. If you only have 24, you'll probably be okay. No need to scrape the filling out of them. We have to do that with some of the recipes, not so today. Now we need to pulverize these to fine crumbs. The easiest way to do that is in a food processor. If you don't have one, toss them in a Ziploc bag and beat them up really well with a rolling pin. That'll also do it. So I'm just going to pulse these until I have nice fine crumbs. Once that is nicely combined, we're going to add some butter, which is going to help that crust bind together, especially in the refrigerator. I have 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm using salted today, but unsalted would also be totally fine. I'm just gonna drizzle this over, then we'll just pulse this a couple more times. The important thing is that all of these cookie crumbs are moistened, and this is backwards for me, so I get a little bit confused. Let's take a look at them. So the Oreo crumbs are all moistened. Let me remove the blade. I'll give it a quick stir because sometimes that butter tries to hide in the corners. We don't want that. And we are going to assemble this in a 9.5-inch pie plate. Easiest way to press it into the pie plate, just use a glass, clean glass, use the bottom to press the crumbs evenly into the bottom of the pie plate, and then we'll press them up the sides as well. All right, once our crust is nice and evenly packed into the pie plate, we're just going to slide this out of the way. You can put it in the fridge if you want, but just leaving it at room temperature is also totally fine. And we're going to make our ganache. So this is that really rich bottom layer of the banks of the Mississippi River that serve as the inspiration for this pie. So we're going to be using 6 ounces of a nicely chopped chocolate bar. You can use semi-sweet chocolate, or you can use a darker chocolate, like a 60% chocolate. It will make the pie a little bit more bitter, which some people like. I personally like it that way. Just use whichever one you prefer. Now, when you make ganache, the traditional way is just to steam the milk separately, pour it over the chocolate, let it sit. That will absolutely work here, but a quicker way, and one that doesn't dirty a saucepan, is just to heat it in the microwave in 20-25 second intervals, stirring well in between until it's nice and smooth, and that's just what I'm going to do today. All right, so once your chocolate is smooth and glossy and totally melted, we're just going to pour this into our Oreo crust. I'm going to use a spatula for this because we don't waste butter and we don't waste chocolate. I just don't like to waste anything around here. Anything left behind becomes a snack. Just spread this into an even layer. This will be the base of the pie. Make sure you get it into the edges of the pie. Right, and this is going to go into our fridge now, where the ganache is going to start to set, and everything will just solidify in there while we prepare the next layer. All right, now we're going to make that chocolate fluffier layer that's going to be the second layer of our pie. So yeah, it would be the second layer no matter which way you look at it. We're going to melt some more chocolate. You need another microwave safe bowl, 8 ounces of chopped chocolate. Again, semi-sweet or dark chocolate, whichever you prefer. This is semi-sweet chocolate today. Now, whenever you're heating chocolate, you want to be really careful and do it in intervals. Of course, this applies with the ganache, but you have to be really careful. When it's just chocolate, we're going to heat it in 20-second intervals, stir well in between until it's completely smooth and melted. Stirring it at these intervals will keep it from seizing. If you've ever ended up with grainy chocolate, that's just chocolate that's seized because it got too hot. All right, once this chocolate is nice and melted, I like to add a teaspoon of instant coffee. This is just going to really deepen that chocolate flavor. And I mentioned earlier how I like a little bit of bitterness. You know, that darker chocolate is a little bit more bitter, keeps things from being too sweet. The instant coffee works really well at helping with that. Espresso powder would also work just fine here, but you would want to use less, probably half, maybe even a quarter. You ready to dirty your next bowl? You need another large mixing bowl. There's only one more after this. I hope you have a dishwasher. We're going to need 16 ounces of cream cheese. You want this to be softened, that way it's easy for you to stir it, and that way it's not going to be lumpy. And I recommend a brick style cream cheese. The kind sold in tubs usually has other additives added to it, and it can keep it from setting up properly and being as firm and sliceable as you'd want it to be. Next, we'll add just 1/4 cup of sour cream. Again, this adds a really nice depth to it. There's definitely a kind of subtle cheesecake vibe to this. And we'll also add 1/2 cup of powdered sugar, and then just use an electric mixer to stir everything on low speed until it's combined. If your cream cheese is soft enough, you could even do this step by hand. You want to start on low speed, that way your powdered sugar doesn't go flying everywhere. Okay, so mixing this, what we're really trying to do is ensure that everything is well combined and smooth and lump-free. So make sure you pause and scrape the sides and bottom of your bowl, kind of smush it with your spatula to look for any lumps. And then I'm just going to mix it again briefly And this should be all good. So let's grab our chocolate mixture and just feel it. You don't want it to be super hot. It doesn't take long for it to cool down. And we're just going to add this into our cream cheese mixture. Trying not to waste any of the chocolate. And then we'll stir everything together until this is nice and uniform. All right, once again, let's do a quick check, make sure everything is well combined, and mine's not, so good thing we did that. It looks like I'm able to mix it all together with the spatula. Now it's time to whip some cream. Grab another mixing bowl. This is the last one we're going to need, I think. Clean your beaters or pop them out for some new ones. Now you do want to make sure you grab a large mixing bowl for this because we're going to be whipping cream and it's going to greatly increase in volume. This is 2.5 cups of heavy cream. And before we start mixing it, we're going to add 1 cup of powdered sugar and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. This whipped cream is going to serve 2 purposes. We're going to fold it into the chocolate mixture to add some nice body and help it become sliceable and give it a really nice texture, and we're going to be putting half of it on top of the pie. All right, so when you're whipping cream, start on a lower speed, gradually increase to high, and then just beat it until you have stiff beats. Okay, it takes some time, so it's definitely best to do this with an electric mixer. Let me grab another spatula. Oh, I only have baby ones left. We've dirtied so many dishes. I just want to show you kind of what we're looking for. Think of like a Cool Whip or a whipped topping consistency. You can see how well it's sticking to the spatula. So it should be nice and fluffy. Actually, I want to go just a smidge further. Stop there. We don't want to go too far. Oops. But you want it to really be nice and thick and voluminous. Like I said, like a whipped topping. So the next step is we're going to combine half of the whipped topping with our chocolate mixture. And you can just eyeball this, it does not have to be exact. So before I do that, let me just give this a quick stir, and it's fine to use these beaters now. They're not going back in the whipped cream because that chocolate can start to firm up and we want this to incorporate as nicely as possible. So I'm just eyeballing it with my tiny baby spatula here. I feel like that's pretty good. And I will fold it with a spatula in a minute, but I just want to give it a head start. So I'm going to stir on low speed to start getting it combined. Low speed, I always get impatient. And then I'm going to switch to my spatula and fold as much as I can by hand. Since we just whipped that cream, we do want to be pretty gentle, but more importantly, everything needs to be uniformly combined. So the mixer can do a little bit of that heavier lifting with you since the chocolate gets a little bit stiff. Hold on a second. Casey's sad because that would be leaving a lot behind. All right, let's mix it in. If I haven't mentioned it already, this is going to be one of the recipes featured in the pies section of my new cookbook, which is currently available for pre-sale and will be shipping hopefully early December if everything goes according to plan. Check the description if you want a link to pre-order that book. Depending when you're watching this, just order it. I don't want any streaks of whipped cream or dark streaks of chocolate remaining. I think we're in pretty good shape here. All right, let me go grab our pie from the refrigerator. This will go right into our pie. We'll gently try to place it in the center. And you can use a spoon or an offset spatula just to kind of gently spread it into the pie crust. Make sure you press it up against the edges, but do so gently so you're not tugging away the edges. It's just if you leave any gaps between the pie filling and the crust, it just makes a weak spot and it makes the crust more likely to crumble when you cut into it. I always kind of make a little bit of a nest in the very center because we're going to be adding a giant pile of whipped cream into that. I had to clean my spoon. We've gone through a lot of dishes. I think it's worth it though. All right, whipped cream next. Dollop that right on the center. If you want to get fancy, you could pipe this onto the pie instead, but you'll be doing a lot of piping because it's a fair bit of whipped cream. It really kind of tempers like the rich indulgence of the pie. Adds like a nice fluffy layer. All right, let's go ahead and kind of swirl that around. Now for a finishing touch, I usually don't do this until right before serving, but I like to just kind of grate some chocolate, do some chocolate curls on top of the pie. I'm just using my potato peeler to, I said grate, but really I'm peeling the chocolate. This is just a bar of semi-sweet chocolate. It just adds a nice finishing touch and a little bit of nice texture on top. Bad news. You did all this work. The pie needs to chill before you can dig into it. It needs to chill for at least 4 to 6 hours. I usually make it the day before serving. Good news is that gives you some time to get your dishes done because you're probably going to have a few of those now. Now, did I prepare pie yesterday to have ready? Yes, I did. Let me go ahead and grab that. All right, this pie has been sitting overnight. So let's do what is always the scariest part for me and cut a nice slice. Can you see me shaking? The first slice is always the messiest. Now you could also freeze this pie. It makes it a little bit harder to cut, but it's pretty good frozen as well. You can see Nikki cringing over there because I didn't cut it right the center. We'll cut a second slice since the first one's always messy. I dirtied every dish in my kitchen. That's an exaggeration, but it felt like it, to make this pie. It's a small exaggeration. Let's see if it's worth it. So you can see we have all of these nice layers. We've got the crumbly Oreo crust, that thick chocolate ganache, the fluffier chocolate layer, and then the super fluffy light whipped cream. Yeah, you're going to dirty a lot of dishes, but once you taste it, hopefully you think it's worth it. Thank you so much for watching. And like I said, if you want to grab my cookbook, pre-orders, or orders, depending on when you're watching this, should be in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Best part of the day. I would say it was worth it. Yeah, it was worth all those dishes. Wow, that is a good pie. Am I gonna get some kind of copyright infringement for humming Taylor Swift while I'm doing this? You said milk again. Always looking for a big spoon, but like our big spoons aren't really big. Can you just pop up something that says cream? Yeah. It is 24, right? Oh, no, I did not. Nikki did it. Casey did it. As soon as he stops barking, I'll finish this. Casey did it. Nikki gets all the credit.